XL back with another NFXL podcast and continuing my look at each of the NFL divisions post draft with an analysis of how it might pan out next season. And in the seventh one of the eight, here comes the NFC South, starting with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, having added starters at right tackle, defensive tackle, and inside linebacker, plus a ton of depth on both offense and defense via free agency, the Falcons came into the draft needing to find some quality starting options. Wide receiver, slot receiver, defensive tackle, inside linebacker, and cornerback were the positions they really need to look to get better at. But with no first round pick and only 6 picks in total, that was pretty much mission impossible for them to cover off all of those needs. Avion Terrell joins his big brother in the Falcons secondary via a second round pick. Zachariah Branch was a third round pick at wide receiver, and inside linebackers Kendall Daniels in round four, and Harold Perkins were added in rounds 4 and 6 to tick off the inside linebacker requirement. Perkins could be a real sixth round steal. I think he's just dropped way too far. So he could be a steal for the Falcons there. So that was making the most of what picks the Falcons had, but still left defensive tackle and wide receivers as areas of needs. Antonio Thompson is a defensive tackle developmental addition, and Ethan Onianwa adds depth at offensive tackle via later round picks. But there's still some holes in that roster for sure. Not much support for Drake London for a start. Look, Kyle Pitts is there, obviously. So after the Falcons, let's move on to the Carolina Panthers. The reigning divisional champion Panthers made a couple of nice additions at inside linebacker and outside linebacker prior to the draft, but still would have been looking to upgrade at tight end, center, defensive tackle, wide receiver, and in their secondary in this draft. So offensive tackle was a surprising positional choice in round one, although maybe adding Monroe Freeling here is a sign of how uncertain the Panthers are of Ikemek Wonu health-wise. Adding defensive tackle Lee Hunter and wide receiver Chris Brazell on day two took care of two of their needs. Then in rounds 4 and 5, two new recruits to their secondary and centre Sam Hecht looked like solid picks too. So this was a pretty good draft all round for the Panthers, considering what ammunition they had available to them. Apart from tight end, they should be better across the board in 2026. Throat going here. Right, Tampa Bay Buccaneers next. The Bucks were blighted by injuries last season, but also missed multiple opportunities to win big in-division games late in the season. So they should have spent all of this off-season kicking themselves for not winning this division last term. Free agency-wise, they saw some long-standing stalwarts depart, including wide receiver Mike Evans, whilst they added a defensive end, offensive linebacker, and inside linebacker to offset some of those losses. That left them still looking at edge, inside linebacker, cornerback on defense, and looking for an Evans replacement at wide receiver too. So Ruben Bain and Josiah Trotter at edge and inside linebacker in the first 2 rounds look like really good additions for the Bucks. Ted Hurst in round 3 might be the Mike Evans replacement, as none of the existing wide receivers fit that profile really, and that could be a good landing spot for Hurst. Cornerback Keontae Scott picked off their final need in round 4, and I like their 2 fifth-round picks too, with guard Billy Schroth and defensive tackle DeMonte Capehart adding some nice young depth options in the trenches, and they made her need to start as longer term. In terms of addressing needs, this was a quality draft haul for the Bucks and may make them favourites to win the division, but they were last season and failed to deliver, so they have to deliver this time round. Finally, the New Orleans Saints. Despite a Tyler Shugg-inspired finish to the season, the Saints were never in contention to win this division last time around, so this off-season was a big one for them if they were to close the gap to the other 3 teams ahead of next season. Running back Travis Etienne was the headline free agent addition, but interior O-lineman David Edwards and inside linebacker Caden Ellis were also nice pickups for the Saints, leaving them looking for help at wide receiver, edge, cornerback, slot receiver, and defensive tackle in this draft. Round 1 selection Jordan Tyson gives them a real viable partner for Chris Olave at wide receiver, and second rounder Christian Miller does the job at defensive tackle. Tight end Oscar Delp was a bit of a surprising pick position-wise, but gives another potential weapon for Tyler Shugg to utilise. Bryce Lance and Barry Brown, who may be a real weapon, the latter, as their kick returner, were two more nice additions on wide receiver additions on day three. Guard Jeremiah Wright and Lorenzo Styles in their secondary have potential upside too. But edge and cornerback were not addressed in this draft, which could hurt their chances of success in 2026. So to sum up the NFC South, the Bucks lost a couple of key veterans, but looked to have had a good off-season, and the result for me looked like the team to beat next season. In a division where no team had a 500 record last season, and all four teams were separated by just 2 wins, it would not take much improvement to win this division. The Panthers joined the Bucks in having a good off-season, but for me, the Falcons are still way too dependent on Drake London, whilst the Saints have left defensive areas unaddressed, and there is a question of whether Tyler Shugg can improve in year two, is a question that he has to answer positively as a result if they are to challenge this coming season. So that's the NFC South done. Final one will be the NFC West, which is a dandy. So I'll be back with that next. See you soon.